Super excited to have Tyler. He's the CEO and co-founder of Meati, which is one of our alternative protein companies that those of you who mentioned last night had samples there. So really excited that you got to try them because he sells out immediately every time he does a drop. Yes. So that might be the only time for a little while that you get to try Meati. And so we invested in Meati first in 2018. So it's been a long journey to see Tyler go from inception when he was still in Chicago, just out of the Polsky Center, to today, where he's kind of building this massive visionary business around changing the game in alternative protein. And it's just been incredible to watch your growth over the years and Meati's growth over the years. I mean, just to give you a context, I met Tyler, before even Meati was a product. Like he had another kind of concept, and he brought Meati chicken in a little Ziploc. We always joke about this into our office, and we were like, "What on earth are we eating?" No FDA approval, but we tasted it, and we were like, "This is incredible." I talked about kind of plant-based 3.0, really hitting the triumvirate with taste and nutrition, price point, and then also, taste and texture, nutrition, and price point, and Meati really hit that triumvirate. So, very excited that, we've been supporting him along the journey. But I wanted to start off and just, Tyler, can you tell us a little bit about your background and just, tell us what is Meati and what's your vision for Meati?
Yep. Well, first off, pleasure to be here. Thank you. So Meati, we are meat, and I think that's an important a distinction here. We just don't produce meat from animals. So we use the root structure of mushrooms. So we all know the mushroom cap itself, right? But underneath the soil is this thread-like structure called mycelium, or what we refer to as mushroom root. And our particular type happens to be debatably one of the most nutritious ingredients in the world. It is super, super nutritious. We grow it in-house, we cultivate it, and then we're able to harvest it and produce these cutlets, similar to chicken breast or like steak. And it's backed by some of the best chefs in the world. So we have Dave Chang, Tom Colicchio are backing our products and are signing off on this. And it happens to be, I would argue, one of the most efficient ways to produce meat in the world. We have backings by the Canadian Pension Fund, by the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Singapore. These are investment groups that are looking at ways to feed the world, to feed the next 10 billion. And they've identified us as to be able to do that. But we package it in a fun and enjoyable way to be able to feed your family, and easy to cook, drop-in replacement to the way you cook chicken breast or like steak. And we're getting a ton of traction.
And can you take us back a little bit to inception? I know you went through an evolution to get to this product, and can you talk a little bit about how the technology evolved and how you got to kind of its current iteration? Because I remember when we first met, you were doing a potato chip.
Yeah.
Nutrient dense one.
So my background in food is from early stages. So my parents run a grass-fed bison operation in Sand Hills, Nebraska. So was exposed to how we feed the world, and to be honest, it's not sustainable. So I recognized that from an early age, and my journey has been in environmental sustainability. So I started off as a field biologist with the Forest Service, studying the impact on the land. How do we, what do our agricultural practices have, the effects have on the land? Then, during that time to develop this thesis of, how are we actually going to feed 10 billion people? What sort of systems can we leverage? What sort of biological systems can we leverage to actually do this effectively and sustainably? Went back to school, got my PhD in environmental engineering, to be able to study this. How do we guide nature in such a way? What else in nature can we leverage in order to feed people? That's where, again, found this mushroom root, and then developed a process to actually cultivate it and start from there. So when I met my co-founder, we said, okay, let's draw some boundaries here. How do we actually create multi-generational global change in the world? And what is actually going to be required in order to do that? Obviously, when you're in food, it's got to taste good. It's got to be 10x better than the products that we have today. It's got to be scalable. So we drew those boundaries and we started down that process. And so, like any entrepreneur, we were testing different markets, focusing on food, focusing on nutrition, and then testing different verticals and seeing what's most effective. Yes, we started with potato chip snacks. We thought that'd be an easy way. We thought there'd be less regulatory burden. But ultimately, what does the market want? What are people, the sort of the hair on fire scenario? What are people begging for? And ultimately, that came down to meat. And we have the technology solution to be able to unlock huge market potential there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been incredible to kind of watch that journey and see the product evolve over time to get to its current iteration, which kind of brings me to part of the elephant in the room is that there's never been more competition. You've got so much chicken product out in the market, apostrophe N, and you have Daring, you've got Nugs, you've got Beyond Meat, Impossible. How do you think of Meati fitting into the space, and how does it really stand out and differentiate itself, given the noise?
I think to your both, I think it was Andrew mentioned earlier, when you bet on sort of underlying principles, first principles, if you will. When it comes to meat, there is unlimited demand. There's no capped upside potential to that. And so yes, you're going to see a lot of players in this space that are trying to compete. But the demand's huge. I mean, $1.5 trillion global market, and the demand's only going up. And so I think if you can provide something that is truly enjoyable to eat, again, 10x better, so higher nutrition, easier to cook, better price point, more sustainable, there's a huge potential there. Yes, we're seeing some challenges in the space, but I think only when you look at it as is the product good enough. I think if you can check all those boxes, you're going to be wildly successful in the space, and that's where we're going.
Have you learned anything from your competition and how you approach the market?
It's food. It's got to taste good. It's got to be good. Easy as that.
Easy one. Yeah.
I mean, that's the box you have to check. And then it has to be good for you too. I think that's and then sustainable. If you can check all three of those boxes, I think again the market is just enormous.
I know. I can't overstate how many bad products are out there. I know Mira mentioned it, but when you're in our industry, you really get a front line to that. We have a lot of interns that come in our door and they're like very excited about all the samples we get, and then they have a bad one and they're like, that's disgusting. And I'm like, yeah, well, you gotta take the good with the bad, You get excited about samples, you're gonna have a lemon in there, but it's not Meati. So let's shift gears for a minute and talk about your progress. What have been some of the key inflection points in the business, and talk about kind of how you've evolved the company from inception to today?
Again, I think it depends on what you're trying to do. With Meati, we're not trying to be a mom and pop business here. We have no intentions of selling media at a farmer's market and at a small scale. And no complaints for those who do. But we're trying to truly create global impact here. And so having that lens of scale is key. In this industry, again, in food, if you're looking at scale, we're talking massive scale. Hundreds of millions of pounds of product that needs to be produced. And I think we started off very well with building the foundation of a scalable process that can actually compete in a commodity-based industry, super difficult. And we've just had to keep a laser focus on that. I mean, how can we produce the amount of product to be able to satisfy the demands? That's a huge challenge for us. It's not a demand problem, it's a supply problem. So we are building what we call the Mega Ranch right now. That'll be able to produce around 40 million pounds. When it's up and operational at the end of 23, we'll be the single largest meat producer in the United States. 40 million pounds. To give you context though, if we we have an ambitious goal to be able to satisfy 10% of the meat market in the United States at some point. To give you context, we'll have to build over 200 of these facilities in order to do that. So we're gonna have to think bigger. We're gonna have to think, how do we build these out fast? We won't build one more in the next year. We're gonna build 10 more. 10 more every year for the next 10 years. That's the scale in order to make an impact in this world, and it's just, it's not easy.
Make no small plans. And I mean, it's a good highlight of kind of what I was saying about kind of that mix between having that big vision and being able to execute. So you've really been able to kind of execute along the way. And have you had key inflection points in the business where like really just kind of things have shifted? I know you kind of brought on a president, you launched the Mega Ranch. What were those key inflection points?
Personally, I think it's as a founder, it's difficult to, I was doing everything. I held every job in this whole company. At one point, I was running marketing, which terrible idea. I had to do it at the time. And then you have to hire people who are better than you, who are smarter than you. And you hear this a lot, but it's true, and it's a difficult transition. So we've looked at if your goal is to feed the world, who's done this before? So to your point, we hired our president. He was the president of General Mills prior to this. Our CFO was the CFO of Frito-Lay and Chobani just recently, and came to work for us. Our CMO was he's Airbnb and Celebrity Cruise Line, billion-dollar industries. That's what's required, and it's difficult to sort of give up. And then it's not easy to manage either. And so learning to shift from a doer to a manager has been an interesting transition, but critical to our success.
What keeps you up at night?
Demand. It's an awesome problem to have, but so another investor that we had this last round is Chipotle. And we're working through their stage gate process right now, and they've given us some numbers. An annual contract with them would be around 30 million pounds. So that would take up the whole Mega Ranch facility. That's just one contract. So how can we, and it's needed in the world too. So not only demand commercially, but demand, the need in the world is just enormous. And so we just continue to think, how do we build these? How do we stand up these facilities fast enough? How do we staff them? How do we get materials in a supply chain restricted environments? It's not easy, but we've got to get good at it.
It's a journey.
Absolutely.
So you touched on Chipotle, which kind of is a good transition to talking about the partnerships you've created. So you've created some amazing partnerships throughout the industry from kind of the earliest inceptions. So we'd love to hear kind of how you did this. And I think the first step was creating that initial investor cohort back in kind of 2018 and the round we joined. And how did you think about kind of your investors and how you built the investor cohort along the way?
Absolutely. I don't know if this is universal across all entrepreneurs, but we really looked at our early seed stage investors as an extension of the company. Part of the workforce. Who has industry knowledge, who has connections within the investor space or the space of food. Who's really going to roll up their sleeves and actually do work. And I just have a ton of admiration for Andrew and Ashley and some of our other seed investors who, one, had the vision to say, I'm going to invest in this chicken in a bag, and to see that vision. I mean, truly, I always have a soft spot for these guys. And then willing to actually go to work. You're busy. You've got a lot of portfolio companies, but willing to pick up a phone. And we had a conversation about hiring this president. Is this the right move? What should I look for? Industry connections. Helping us with ingredient connections that have actually gone a long ways. That means a lot, and it's super helpful. So that's the way we looked at it, and I think we built a really good cohort of seed investors who, to be honest, play a pivotal role in our success today.
I remember in the earliest days we had all these discussions around marketing and go-to-market strategy, and had all these deep dives, and you're always kind of focused on kind of who you want to bring around you to have that right kind of go-to-market strategy. But it's been kind of fun to work along the way.
Yeah. We were talking about, should we be a B2B player? Should we be B2C? We had those conversations, and it was really helpful given your lens on the market. And so, again, I really appreciate that.
Well, we planted you to say that, so thank you. What about other industry partners? So I know you mentioned Colicchio, David Chang, you have some celebrities. I feel like celebrities are kind of a commodity these days. Everyone slaps a celebrity on their brand, and how do you think about that? Is that just a name, for PR?
Not with our approach. I think it can be. We make sure any celebrity that we work with actually invests in the company. So Dave Chang wrote one of his biggest checks today into Meati, and then we also do a sort of contract with a service, with sort of ask. And I think that's a good way to do it. So they're invested in the company, they're bought in, and they're excited about it, and then they're willing to go to work. Actually, Dave Chang flew out to Meati, to our headquarters 2 weeks ago, and sat down with the team, spent a whole day with us talking about marketing strategy, talking about product pipeline, talking about what we call it, how do we pitch it to people, and so that's been our approach to date, and I think it's been super helpful. I mean, these individuals are successful in their own career, and they have a good viewpoint on the world, and we really like to tap into that and see what we can learn.
Yeah, I've always admired how you've been so thoughtful. You've had a lot of partnerships that come your way, and we've talked about kind of who's the right partner for Meati, and you've just been thoughtful about, where do they fit in and how do they really add value to the company and really make sure that they're aligned with the brand vision and mission and really can help your success instead of just kind of saying, I think you said at one point, Kim Kardashian came to you and was like, I'm interested, but that wasn't obviously the right partnership if you're thinking about how do we have that authentic connection.
Absolutely, yeah. We hold a high bar, and I think that's important for any entrepreneurs or any companies that are looking for these partners. Is make sure they're bought in, make sure they're actually deliver on what you hope they will.
And there's a good alignment between brand.
Absolutely.
So looking back on the journey to date, do you have any key learnings for other founders and entrepreneurs? What would some of your key takeaways be?
Talent is key. Hiring the right people that can really deliver, and making tough talent calls fast. Again, you read all the books, they say this every time, but it's so important. We've got to have people who understand the industry. I think that's something as a I don't have a background in CPG, and I think we had a lot of novel ideas of ways we wanted to really shake up the industry and disrupt. I think you can only take on so many challenges at a time. Our product is novel, our process is novel, but our go-to-market is very well worn path. And so I think hiring people who have done this before is a key learning for us, and has been as soon as we really adopted that idea of again, it's food, it's been around for a long time. Hire the key people who have done this before, and then just push go.
How have you evolved as an entrepreneur? How have you kind of developed yourself into a leader? Because a lot of entrepreneurs and founders can't make that journey from seed stage to exit. And how do you make sure that you are kind of ready for that?
Coaching, for sure. Yeah. I think that's key. I think you've got to be self-aware and know what you know and know what you don't know. And so, this has been a day-to-day process. I constantly talk to folks around the table. How can I be better? Trying to look ahead, trying to look around corners, working with coaches to try to figure out. My job is now a manager of people. We have some incredible talent that have spent 30 plus years in this industry, who have been wildly successful. How do we make sure they're all cohesive, working together, they're aligned, they're focused, their personalities are gelling well. I didn't, nothing prepared me for that, and so that just takes, every day. It's just trying to get better.
Last question, what do you see as the future for alternative protein? Where does the market go, not just Meati?
I think, again, so especially right now with this category, with Beyond Meat, tanking, let's be honest. If you look at this as meat, if you look at this as nutrition, then there's no capped upside. It's just an enormous market. And so, I think we need more diversity in our food system, not less. And so I don't think this is a winner take all. I don't think there's a silver bullet, not even Meati. And so it's those that are gonna be successful, again, they've gotta taste good, but they've gotta be built on really strong fundamentals. Is it truly scalable? Is it energy, resource efficient to be able to produce it? Is it gonna be cost competitive? If you can check those boxes, there's an enormous market for this. And so, I think it's just a blip in time, but as we look forward, I think in the next 10 years, we're gonna have a much more diverse plate, and it's gonna be a variety of different protein options, and they're gonna be based on good fundamentals.
You weren't here earlier, but I called out exactly those points, so I guess we're aligned.
Yeah.
I want to open it up for Q&A. I don't actually know what time it is, so yeah, we have a couple minutes. So if anyone has any questions for Tyler.
Yeah, Spencer.
You mentioned early on having a conversation of whether you wanted to be, a direct business or a wholesale business, and, a lot of brands seem to have kind of become increasingly agnostic on that. I'm curious how you find, the happy medium there.
For us, there was a variety of different factors. So, margins was key, right? So being a B2B or B2C player, which our margins are way better. And we have lightning in the bottom, and so why not own that whole value chain? And then scale. So in order to be a B2B player, especially coming from Ingredion, you understand that, it's at a commodity scale, B2B, it's a race to the bottom, it's a race to scale. And that was one that we didn't think we could win. And so focusing, going direct to consumer, we were able to control the marketing aspect and the margins and our own fate, and all of that together was sort of helped educate our decision.
We always joke that we have Eileen as a key advisor to Blue Side, who's the CEO of Ingredion, and we have not made a pure play ingredient play for that exact reason.
It's tough.
So, yeah.
Not one I would want to be in right now, that's for sure.
Other questions for Tyler? Yeah, Jess.
How much time do you spend on just growing your existing products versus R&D and trying to come up with new products for the marketplace?
That's the $1 billion question right there. We did the math the other day, and even if we were, so right now ground products like Beyond Meat and Impossible, I think it's something around 10% household market penetration. And so if you were to take whole cuts, chicken breast and steak, and you were to say, 10% market penetration, we could create a whole business just on that. And so as an entrepreneur, as an early stage company, focus is key. So we keep going back because we have this great platform. We can create all sorts of different products, flavors, and different cuts. But then every time we look at, all right, if we want to, the pros and cons, what do you lose? It's sort of a zero-sum game when you're talking about supply as well. And so that distraction is real. And so, and also the implications on manufacturing. So if we were talking about a new, even like strips and cubes, right? Simple, you just cut it up. Well, that costs $10 million, and it takes a year to be able to implement in our facilities. And so it really, when it comes down to, it's just focus. And so we've landed on a core 4. So you do want shelf placement. You do want that, sort of retail space within the grocery store, but then you want focus as well. And so we've after a lot of debate have identified 4 core SKUs and are laser focused on delivering those at least for the next year. And then we'll start to, retailers and food service will start to ask for innovation, and we'll do that at the right time. But for us, it's all about focus.
Yeah, Alan.
What's the capital required for one of these mega ranches?
A lot, but
Where does it come from?
Yeah, well, and that's a great question, another $1 billion question for sure. We have to own probably the first couple.
Right.
Yeah, but then once you have a working prototype and you have a market, we can bring in bankers and look at creative debt financing and say, hey, listen, this system works. Here's the blueprint. We have a market, they want it, and then it's just actually from there it becomes easier to finance through banks to be able to do it. But until then, to get to this point, it's all been
So
crazy
what does
venture.
one cost?
Upwards of around 100 million. Yeah. But the payback, we're talking only around 2 years, so it's actually quite an attractive business proposition.
You've taken in equipment financing.
And then you can equipment finance, debt financing, venture.
That's all in. For all the equipment, everything is. I don't know.
Yeah. But to give you a context of kind of how crazy this is, we were able to go to someone who built this building and say, hey, I'm a pre-revenue company. No one's ever built this before. We're going to build this, this one-of-a-kind factory in your facility. Do you trust us? Okay, and we were able to get someone to sign off, and then to find investors who are willing to say, you have, your pre-revenue, and you want to build a $100 million facility. It really takes guts, but again, with food, you try it, you taste it, you're like, this is good, this is what I'm familiar with. Customers are looking for meat. it doesn't take too crazy of a leap of faith, but it does take some guts to be able to invest in it. Yeah.
You already have like a huge amount of retail kind of demand in your pipeline that you can service if you could produce today. So.
For sure, yeah, and that's a good context too. For all of our investors, especially the last couple of rounds, we were able to show the pipeline, and we have 3-4x the demand that we have supply over the next couple of years. So running that model and saying, okay, even if you're able to convert just a small fraction of this, you'll be successful, and that really helped to bring investors in.
And you just raised a good amount of money with your Series C.
Yeah, we were.
Continuing to raise it, maybe.
Yeah. So we did close on 150 million just a couple months ago, which was not an easy environment to be able to close in. But again, the fundamentals are super strong. And if you look towards the future, again, the demand's not going away, and so we've been pretty successful today.
Mark, I think you had a question. We'll do the last one.
To straighten out the timeline, the Meati product is in the grocery store now.
Yeah, so we're in we're in I think now 7 Sprouts locations in Colorado. We have a couple retail locations as well in Colorado and in the Southwest. That's all coming out of our pilot facility right now. And then here, actually in Jan 1, will be full national Sprouts, full national Myers. I mean, the pipeline is it's stacked. We have over 3 to 4x the demand, and we'll be I think over a couple thousand locations by the end of next year.
And how did you determine the retail pricing?
What the market would accept. I think that's the value proposition for the retailer is not to commoditize this category. Margins on traditional animal meat products are not very good. And so, our ability to come in and say, actually, you can, the demand's there. They know their customer better than anybody, and that's the thing that's interesting about this category is as much news as we're seeing around, the difficulties of Beyond Meat. You talk to a retailer, and they still identify, plant-based meat as one of their highest growth categories. The demand is there, the products just aren't. And so when we show them our product, they're very excited about it. And the fact that they can maintain really good margins is an attractive value proposition. So they want to keep it as high as they possibly can. And even with Sprouts, we tested, price elasticity and raised the price per pound by almost $2, and demand was still there. When you're supply limited and demand is high, you can command a high price point. And so far, we continue to be successful. Ultimately, our goal is to be able to compete with commodity-based meat prices, but that requires scale and time. And so I think over the next 5 years or so, we'll continue to bring the price down. But until then, keeping it at more around organic meat prices.
Final question? Yeah, Tyler, and we'll let you guys have a break.
Yeah. What technology advancements would you like to see to improve the alternative proteins scalability of the industry?
To be honest, I think they're traditionally using pea and soy is the wrong platform. So when you look at plants in general, they're not really good at producing protein, and that's where you need to grow lots of them, and then you need to boil and then dry, pull out all this protein, and then you have to condense it and then extrude it. It's really not the most efficient process. That's where our approach is with mushroom root. It's actually really high in protein content. So we don't need to extract the protein. We can use the whole biomass itself, the whole food, and then be able to move forward. And so I think it's looking at other alternatives. If you're in the meat category, you've got to be high in protein. So what else is out there in order that is high in protein that doesn't need all this processing? I think that'll be key. I think we're one of those that shows that's possible, and I'm excited to see what else is out there.
So, can't thank Tyler enough for sharing his story with you. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back at around 11:30 for our portfolio companies, and then we'll go to lunch.